Hi, my name is Deborah Barkun, and I'm the creative director of the Berman Museum of Art at Ursinus College. Today, I'll discuss a recent acquisition to our permanent collection, Kara Walker's Resurrection Story Without Patrons, an etching from 2017. Kara Walker has been a significant force in contemporary art since the 1990s. Her first major solo exhibition, organized by the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis in 2007, traveled to major venues in the US and Paris. Kara Walker was born in Stockton, California in 1969, but raised in Stone Mountain, Georgia, where her father was a painting professor. She attended Atlanta College of Art and received her MFA from RISD. She is one of the youngest recipients of a MacArthur Award and became a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters in 2015. Walker's rise to prominence in the art world began with works that employed cut paper silhouettes, a popular 18th century portrait medium, to realize potent works that give visual presence to histories and legacies of slavery in America, particularly convergences of racial, physical, psychological, and sexual violence and trauma. At the same time, her works challenge and interrogate these traumas. Walker's use of the silhouette medium, racial and sexual stereotypes, and an element of sinister fantasy leads to complex narratives that can be difficult to explicate. On first inspection, a narrative may seemingly emerge, only to be suddenly confounded when one notices a human figure's reptilian tail or equine legs. Through this confluence of historical memory and lived and imagined horror, Walker pushes viewers into uncomfortable and crucial positions of self-examination. Of her representational approach, Walker states, quote, "The silhouette says a lot with very little information, but that's also what the stereotype does. So I saw the silhouette and stereotype as linked. Of course, while the stereotype or emblem can communicate with a lot of people, and a lot of people can understand it, the other side is that it also reduces differences, reduces diversity to that stereotype." In Resurrection Story Without Patrons, an etching on paper, Walker's signature deep black silhouette is reserved for the central figure, a monumental sculptural bust of a nude female figure being hoisted into place by several black figures, men, women, and a child, themselves silhouetted in dark, washy gray tones that provide greater dimensionality, while the force and exertion of their labor further animates them. This dramatic scene unfolds through an aperture framed by splintering wooden boards set at odd angles, as though one is looking through a hole in the wreckage of a building or ship, perhaps the wreckage of a slave vessel during the Middle Passage. In the upper right-hand corner, two nails jut awkwardly from a plank. Beyond the rocky coastline is an expanse of water dotted with distant islands, and a billowing white cloud rises along the horizon, offsetting the colossal profile, an embodiment of strength and resilience. Walker produced Resurrection Story Without Patrons following a 2016 residency at the American Academy of Rome. In Rome, Walker was surrounded by Christian, medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque art and architecture, works that speak with the vocabulary of resurrection, martyrdom, and memorial, and attest to the Church's spiritual and political power and wealth. At the same time, back home in the US, the news was erupting with stories of police shootings of unarmed Black men and women and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. The imagery in Resurrection Story Without Patrons fuses Walker's interest in the antebellum South with contemporary African American experience and current events and Renaissance artistic traditions. How can looking at examples of Renaissance art, in which Walker was immersed during her time in Rome, provide context for beginning to understand Resurrection Story Without Patrons and its title? Whose resurrection story are we witnessing? Who are the missing patrons referred to in the title, and where have they gone? In Walker's print, the exertion exhibited by the figures pushing and heaving the sculptural bust into position will result in an enduring marker of commemoration. At the same time, the ropes positioned around the figure's neck may also conjure the bondage of slavery or the horrors of lynching. Here, Walker also draws from Renaissance iconography associated with the raising of the cross, which show bodies contorted in struggle to raise the cross with the body of the crucified Christ, as in this drawing on the right by Leonardo Corona. By invoking this representational precedent, Walker draws associations of martyrdom, political and spiritual, and possibly of resurrection. Is her central figure being resurrected from the watery depths and reinstalled in its rightful place? As presented by Walker, is the act of raising this monumental icon of Black female empowerment a form of restoring a legacy to its rightful position? The standalone print acquired by the Berman Museum exists elsewhere in a more extensive version, as seen here, Resurrection Story with Patrons. In this version, the central image is flanked on either side by figures, one male, one female, in reverse silhouette, white against a dark ground, whose dress suggests the antebellum era. The crossbeams behind the two spectral figures traverse the print's white borders to connect with beams within the central image. These points of visual connection create a continuum across the three prints, revealing that they are in fact one. How can we begin to make sense of these figures who stand vigil over this central scene? Again, Renaissance art may help to unpack Walker's conceptual program. Three-panel religious altarpieces, called triptychs, were popular visual forms that served to inspire religious observance. Artists produced triptychs and polyptychs, altarpieces with more than 3 panels, on a massive scale to crown church or cathedral altars, or on an intimate scale to aid in personal prayer and reflection, as in this example by Gerard David. Because the panels were hinged together, the left and right wings could fold inward to make the object portable if the owners were to travel. In David's triptych, the central scene depicts the Nativity, the Virgin Mary and Joseph in the manger praying over the infant Christ while angels hover above. The panels to the left and right feature standing saints and, below, the altarpiece's donors or patrons, their hands clasped in prayer and kneeling to convey their mortal status. Wealthy Renaissance patrons commissioned both public and private works of religious art and architecture as demonstrations of piety or status, or as gestures of atonement. Their portraits were included in their commissions to signal to God and to viewers the extent of their devotion. Patron portraits were generally relegated to side panels, separate from the holy scene, but granted a privileged vantage point from which to witness the miracle. Here, the unidentified patrons gaze intently at the miraculous scene unfolding in the central panel. Looking at David's Nativity triptych and the Resurrection Story triptych together, one can see how Walker's active appropriation invites a narrative reading. In Resurrection Story with Patrons, the patrons are provided a privileged access to the miracle unfolding in the central panel. Does Walker conceive this rising figure as a savior, a political or spiritual martyr? Are these patrons financial backers, as in the Renaissance triptych, or is their patronage of a different sort? Earlier, I described Walker's patrons as spectral. This reading derives from their ghostly countenance and antebellum dress, but also from the way the female figure seemingly defies gravity. The bow securing the garment around her waist floats behind her as though caught in an updraft, and her tenuous hand seems to levitate as it extends toward the central scene. The male figure appears unaffected by the molten wax dripping through his fingers. Unlike the prostrate Renaissance patrons on the right, whose posture betrays their mortal status, Walker's figures make no such gestures. They watch, upright, as though in eternal candlelight vigil, as though their legacy is their patronage. And if these patrons are ancestors, might this be their resurrection story? Once one has seen resurrection story with patrons, one cannot see resurrection story without patrons as anything but incomplete. Indeed, the title itself references the work's incompleteness. It strikes me that this may be the point. A historical predicament of multi-panel Renaissance altarpieces is that over time, many have been literally unhinged, dismantled, and their constituent parts sold piecemeal and scattered, lost, or destroyed. Renaissance art historians often work to unite surviving panels from disparate collections across the globe. The brutality of slavery divided families. Legacies were lost. The brutality of contemporary racial violence and injustice fragments families and communities. Perhaps Walker's striking central figure, monument, memorial, martyr, or miracle, and the people who strain and struggle to upraise her, seek unification with their patrons.